everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Faye Bishop Report, where the culture is news. I wanted to do a video about something that kind of hit close to home about a week ago. I want to do the video for two reasons. One, what took place is an issue that is plaguing many property owners across the entire U.S. And I work in real estate. And it's just kind of like, wow, this actually happened right on my street where I lived. So, getting right to the story. About a week ago, I saw my old neighbor. I can't remember the last time I saw him. It's prior to that day. I think it had been a while. But needless to say, I had just got finished cutting some grass. And after I put everything in the house, I come back to the door and my old neighbor is just standing out there. He has two police officers with him. He has some guys who look like movers. I know there was a moving van. And he had a couple of other people with him. It had to be about 10 or 11 people out there beside himself. Well, I live on a street where not much activity takes place at all. So, of course, I'm standing there looking like, okay, what is going on? And a couple of my other neighbors had came to their doors wondering what was going on as well. Because, again, this is a really quiet street. Everybody kind of knows everybody. Nothing really ever happens. You know, we're all working families. It's a really good street. So we just wanted to know what was the commotion. Well, as it turned out, my neighbor was trying to get squatters off of his property. And it took about, oh my God, I think they were out there firstly banging on the door for about 20 minutes. They went around the backyard area. They continued to bang and bang and bang. I don't know if they broke in or how, what happened, because I eventually came back into my house. But needless to say, the whole ordeal took about 3 hours before the commotion was all done and over with. And after talking to my neighbor, he said to me, prior to me coming in the house, I had asked him what was going on. He said that they were squatting in his property. He had been gone for about 2 years. I have no clue why he left his property abandoned like that for that long. But he told me the goal was to get them moved out because he is trying to get the property fixed up and he's trying to sell it. So the goal with this video is to provide a few tips on, how to keep squatters out of your property to begin with, but also how to remove them in a way that is not as costly for you as it is others, because this is an ongoing problem and it is one that it really kind of spins out of control, and particularly if we attack the situation too late. Like I said, according to what was explained to me, those squatters had lived in his property for up to a year. Now, I don't know whether or not he knew that they did. Again, I don't even know if that day was the first attempt that he tried to remove the squatters from his home. But either way, it was a big major ordeal. It was a big mess. And he just looked like he was over it. And I've seen him in recent days. It looks like they're fixing the property up to sell. But you could just tell it's like a big weight off his shoulders. So without further ado, let me get right down to it. For those that don't know what squatting is when someone deliberately enters a property without permission and deliberately takes up residence there or intends to live there. A lot of times people squat in residential buildings and apartments. They squat in houses. They squat in flats. Either way, squatting is illegal. Now, what isn't illegal is adverse possession. And this is where this gets tricky. Squatting, or a lot of squatters, are aware of what adverse possession is. And adverse possession is when the squatter tries to lay claim to a property and they begin to treat it as their own without any opposition from the actual true owner sometimes. And because of that, they may be able to gain legal title to a property under certain conditions. Now, this could usually take several years. So most times property owners don't have to worry about actually losing the property, but proving that they actually own the property is the problem in these situations. Squatters are very bold. A lot of them, in fact, all of them, in my opinion, are assholes. You have some that are even moving into vacant bank-owned properties, claiming to be victims of rental scams, and they are demanding money even from the bank to vacate. Some will even move into the property and pretend like they're the landlord, and they will like illegally rent your property out without your knowledge to other squatters or to people and collect money. The squatting has just really gotten so bad, and it's become trendy actually. There's even an anti-government group attached to this trend, and the FBI has even classified squatting now as a form of domestic terrorism, which I cannot blame because it is. For homeowners and property owners, this thing can be a straight headache to deal with. Not only that, for a lot of property owners and homeowners, it's very, very costly. Now, while the world is aware that squatting is an out of control problem, what I can appreciate is that right now you do have city councilmen and state assemblymen who are working to get proposed legislation in place that protects homeowners and property owners away from squatters. They're trying to get bills passed that makes it easier to get squatters removed from the home and less costly. But in the meantime, here are just a few suggestions that can help you keep squatters off your property and, possibly keep you from having to deal with an even bigger problem, more costly problem later on down the line. Again, there are no absolute guarantees, but these are just a few suggestions and a few ideas that can help you. And I'll start backwards with number 4. The biggest problem that I know with a lot of properties just everywhere is that they sit abandoned and unprotected for too long. With my neighbor, he did admit that he hadn't lived in his property for 2 years. The squatters were there for an entire year. Even if without him not living there, the fact that it just sat idle like that and just completely no type of security system, no nothing. It just made it easier for the squatters to get in and set up home. With that, I will suggest, if you aren't able to rent out your property right away, if there is, other than boarding it up and locking it up, you really don't have a plan in place to put anybody in it right away, you should install a security system and also take photos of your property. If you have a good relationship with your neighbors, tell them to keep an eye out for your property and report any unusual activity. With a tight electronic security system, the police gets called, a break-in gets reported, the person gets arrested for trespassing and breaking and entering. You've eliminated your squatter. They never get a chance to get in or move in and set up home. Now, non-cellular alarm systems are good alarm systems. They're also, the less costly one, but they are also the most easy to compromise. So my recommendation is that you should look into getting a cell-based security system. They are really, 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 really good. They're somewhat expensive, but they are so worth it, in my opinion, because, again, it alerts the police right away. You're alerted. The person breaking in gets arrested, and you've pretty much eliminated a squatter from coming into your property and trying to set up shop. Number 3, learn your state laws and learn about the adverse possession laws for your state. Again, they vary across the board. So you want to learn what protections you do have, what protections or rights the squatters have, because believe it or not, they have them. And you just want to also learn the difference between ejectment and eviction, because former tenants can also become squatters too. It's not just drug pushers and homeless people who squat. There are people who were former tenants who, do everything in their power not to leave, and it could just be a big headache. An ejectment is a process for getting rid of squatters. Squatters, of course, are the people who are trespassing on your property and have never had a lease with you or anyone else. They basically just moved into your property. An eviction, of course, is for someone who was renting from you, who had a lease with you, and the tenant has breached that lease and for failure to pay rent, or having too many people on the property, or violating the terms of the lease agreement. And, you have to act fast with getting the eviction, which is usually relatively fast, cheap, and simple. However, ejectments, and this is again, this squatter situation, are handled very differently than evictions are, because for many states, ejectments are handled in the court of common pleas instead of municipal court, which in my opinion is who should handle it. However, the court of common pleas is a trial court, and it's usually reserved for cases that could involve a jury trial. And ejectments cost money, because you have to sometimes hire an attorney to file a complaint on your behalf. Then you have to pay fees to get documents drafted up, to request to have the sheriff evict the squatters. You sometimes have to pay process servers to serve a squatter. And then after the squatter gets served with a complaint of ejectment, you have to wait 20 days for a response, and all of this old unnecessary stuff. And if the squatter is still sticking around after you've won your lawsuit, then you got to pay a sheriff or a police officer, which my neighbor did. And I believe this is what took place in his situation. But he had to get the sheriff or the police officers to get the squatters out of his property. Most of the times the police will get them out successfully. But again, I stress for number 3 to learn law for adverse possession and squatters and homeowner and property owner rights, because in states like California, the police tend to be laxed when removing squatters from properties, because their adverse possession law is largely defined and regulated by the state courts. There isn't a single statute in the Golden State that dictates elements that a trespasser must establish, some way or some document to prove adverse possession. In California, it's really tricky, and it's not just California, it's other states as well. But Cali is just an example that the government has the ultimate say when it comes to property ownership. In San Francisco, they actually have tenant unions that protect squatters. So again, learn the law, learn about adverse possession law, learn your rights, learn about your protections, and what can be done to get some protections in place for yourself to alleviate your squatter issue. Number 2, you want to make routine inspections of your property a habit. Many property management companies, which a lot of landlords use and property owners use, they're good, but they tend to spread out property inspections over a period in a year. And we make the mistake of trusting them to handle it, when the reality is it's not that they're doing anything wrong. They just don't inspect properties regularly when they're vacant, particularly after they're vacant. Their job, they focus primarily on just getting people in there, getting them out, and whatever. My personal opinion, I personally recommend you as the owner to inspect your property every week, at least 2 or 3 times a week. Do not do it on a scheduled routine, because squatters like to watch us. Just show up. Even if you just show up to the property to collect mail, make inspections a priority. And finally, number 1, please do not abandon your property and just leave it vacant. Vacant properties are prime targets. It really doesn't take long for squatters to break in, change the locks, go to a Staples or some sort of DocuCare type of store and create a fake title, some sort of fake lease agreement. They'll even go out of their way to turn electricity on or get cable in their name. They'll even steal it from another neighbor, and they'll act as the homeowner. In my opinion, the best way to protect your property from squatting criminals, the best line of defense to guard yourself from them, is to keep your property filled. Even if you have to rent it out to a family member or a Joe millennial college student and charge them month to month, get your property filled. People are always looking for somewhere to live, and many would jump at the chance to stay somewhere for cheap. Rent your place out. This is my opinion. Again, I just feel like that's the best line of defense and the best protection. Remember, the goal is acting with diligence with your property and taking immediate action in the face of an issue, because again, the squatting situation is just really out of control, and you just want to make sure that you are taking every precautionary measure and every preventative action to keep yourself from being a victim. I am Faye Bishop. This has been your report. I'll catch you guys next time.